continue relying on rain-fed agriculture. We must get dams and we must irrigate get to irrigated agriculture. Lastly, our airport, look at the way it is. We tried the PPP model, and it didn't work. Now, this infrastructure require heavy funding. Where do we get that money? There are options. Option A is to come for your money, the salary that you
There's none left.
and other taxes. I don't think you have any other money left to give us. And in fact, if anything, you want us to reduce the tax rates. So that is not, tax hike is not an option. Then the other option is to borrow more. Again, that is not an option because right now we are spending close to 50% of our taxes in debt servicing. So what is the other option left? Other more innovative, creative ways. Now we have mature value assets, value investments. Government, again, I want to repeat, is not in the business of doing business. The government should facilitate businesses. By the way, we are not supposed to be depending on dividend. Dividend is not the income stream that the government should rely on. Government should get taxes and implement projects. As a matter of fact, every business, including your kiosk, the government owns almost 30% of it, whether you like it or not, because we tax it. Therefore, what we need to do is to create an economy where the private sector invests resources, and out of those resources, they make huge profits. Right. We have an economy which would allow the private sector to make big profits, and the profit then would give us taxes. Now, let me conclude by saying this. Having assessed that, and having realized that we need resources to do this infrastructure for our economic takeoff, therefore we must look for seed money. And that is why we are looking at those assets which are mature enough, which can be taken to the market, and we raise some money, put in an investment vehicle, which we are calling National Infrastructure Fund. Now, this National Infrastructure Fund will be a limited liability company, which will be formed under the government-owned enterprises bill, which we have a law which we have just passed. Now, this company will be the one now charged with the responsibility of helping to crowd in the private sector investment into the public infrastructure projects, like the institutional investors, pension funds, insurance funds, and other individuals who have resources to come and invest here. This fund will help to de-risk the investment in the public infrastructure project. So crowding in resources. If we have, for example,
so it's like Kenya's old crowd fund, Kenya's own personal crowdfunding model.
Yes.
What are we looking at here is that you would then follow the example of what you likely would be doing with Safaricom, whereby if there's government stake to be divested, then you continue adding to this fund where you can then take from to cover some of these infrastructure projects. Am I right?
So you are right. What we are looking at is those investments which we can divest into, raise funds. We are putting as seed capital into this company. Once you put money there, then the responsibility of this company will be will be extensive. It is not just having the money. The design of projects, the fundraising for the projects, the implementation of the projects will now be given to this company, because again, private capital fears bureaucracy. If you subject them to government bureaucracy, they will take off. So what you do is you have money, and I will give you an example. For example, you want to implement a project that would cost you 100 billion shillings. Now that project, it can be designed, the costing is done, the profitability of it is calculated, and it is found to be commercially viable. So what happens is that this fund will now commit, say, 20% into this investment, and then that will be attractive to other players. The institutional investors would now then come, one gives 20, another 30%, 40%, and then they invest collectively. So it is a remodeling of the PPP concept.
So what happens to ministries who have been given, in part, this responsibility all along anyway? What happens to them? Or does this fund then now take money and give to each of these ministries? I'm going somewhere with this question. What happens to them who have the job of doing this very thing? There's an entire ministry of industry and trade who has a job of looking at investments and applying them in different areas. How does this work with those?
I will explain to you. First, these ministries will be left with two things. Number one, we are taking away from these ministries commercially viable projects, implementation of the same. Like if it is roads, the roads that can be tolled and dualed and tolled would be taken away. The dams that can be done, which are commercially viable, will be taken away. Energy projects, in terms of generation, transmission, will be taken away to be implemented by this company. Now, these ministries will remain to do policies around the transport or whatever sector, but again, they will still be left with the non-commercially viable projects. There are roads in the rural areas, there are roads which you cannot toll. Those roads are still going to be executed by the line ministries. But those which are commercially viable will be done commercially and, in the sense, will be run and executed with that business mind.
So who handles, who controls, who manages this infrastructure fund, which ostensibly will be holding huge amounts of funds based on what you're saying? Who handles that?
We are forming a company. And so this company will be run professionally and with a business mind. If you look at the details of the Government-Owned Enterprises Act now, you can see we are actually shifting away from a system where government-owned enterprises, including the ones that are commercially viable, those who are making profit like APC, they were still being run with heavy government presence. And even the appointments to the board, the management structure, the governance structure was so government heavy. And that was compromising the professionalism in terms of running this business.
You seem to be admitting at some level, Waziri, that government is unable to carry out things professionally. And so this must be removed and given to a private entity to then control things, which money then goes back to government.
But no, that is a reality. The government has no technical expertise to run businesses. In fact, the bureaucracy in government, the world over, there is no government that is efficient in doing business because all governments are bureaucratic. There is no government that is not bureaucratic. So even in terms of decision making, it is a challenge. Who would want to invest or do business with a system where you take 2 months, you are still pushing paper from left, right, and center? So if you have to carry out an economic activity, you must reduce government presence. Take, for example, Safaricom. If it continued the way it was in the before 2008, Safaricom would probably just be making 2-3 billion in a year. And we would be still very comfortable. We would be saying today that, look, this is a jewel. It is giving us dividend of 3 billion shillings per year. But look, with 35% shareholding, we have been getting about 16 billion dividend per year. And with 20% shareholding, because we are allowing more private sector participation, and Vodacom may, from the way they are communicating, invest even more resources in this company. And with 20%, we may end up even making over 10 billion. Look at what Vodacom has just announced. They have said that even the dividend that you're giving us in advance, chances are that they may recoup it in 2-3 years, meaning they're already projecting higher profits. So you need private sector participation in business-oriented enterprises.
Is that why you gave it to Vodafone, or is that why the decision is leaning towards just Vodacom as a sole buyer, as it were, as opposed to ponying up these shares to the general public who, own some of the shares in the first place? Why didn't we see that it was opened up for more people in that decision already? A number of
reasons. Number one, Vodacom as a company has history with this company, Safaricom PLC. They have been in this space for some time. They understand the company, they understand the business. They can take more risk than any other new player coming in. Two, it would have not been prudent to offer this company or the more shares to the public for a number of reasons. Reason number A, that share prices of this the share price of Safaricom today in the Nairobi Securities Exchange is way below the price that we got. And so if you took it to the market, chances are that you are going to get it at even a discount of the current share price, because you are offloading more shares, meaning when you offload more shares, clearly you are creating more supply of shares as opposed to the demand, which is constant, I assume. So then the prices would even come down. 3, already we have another active company that we are soon giving out to the public. That is the Kenya Pipeline Company. If you again put in another asset, it would be saturating the market. So it was not a good idea. Lastly, there is also benefit in selling, or rather divesting the shares to Vodacom, because even the way it will be paid, they will be paying us in hard currencies, as opposed to if you sold or if you offloaded the shares to the domestic market. And the hard currency has the benefit of improving and increasing our forex reserves, which again would help us in stabilizing the shilling further. So in terms of economic fundamentals and economic decision, it makes more sense in making this decision to move this direction.
Waziri, you said that the government has no business in making profit. It's there in doing development and making sure that things like infrastructure is a reality. But even while at that, the company that you're saying that is being formed that will oversee the infrastructure fund, one asks the question, at the end of the day, the government still has a stake in it. Still has a hand in it, right?
Yes.
But the biggest problem that the country has continued to face years on end, you look at companies like the KPC, the KCC that we've had, good companies that have been performing well, but there is always that problem of corruption. So even with this company that now is being formed, what guarantees are there that it would not end up like the companies the government has had before?
This company that is being formed, first, we must ensure as a government that the method of and the process of bringing people into the governance structure of the company is transparent and one that is professionally executed, so that we get the right people. Because again, what will set this company apart from the rest is if it is managed prudently and efficiently. And you need that, because otherwise we would not be able to realize our objective of having serious infrastructural development in this country. We need a company that is going to have a mindset of execution with a business mind. So that's the process of constituting the company, and we are working on that already. The company constitution, governance structure, and the framework to help it execute its function must be above board.
So you see the company that you talk about, because when you talk about corruption, there is the fact that what you're talking about today, you find these companies are owing Kenyans. You talk about pending bills from these companies, suppliers have been there, and Kenyans have not been paid. And this company that you're forming, one would hope that it would not end there. But Bwana CS, as we talk, let's talk about pending bills, 500 and something billion shillings that Kenyans have not been paid, supplied services and goods, they've not been paid. What's the plan?
So first of all, let me debunk the idea that this company may end up with this John Mbadi. This company is not going to execute business in the normal way of having about government budget, procurement process, and we come and bid, and no, that is not it. This company's sole objective is to get these infrastructure projects out of the budget. The funding will be done by private players who already have the money and putting in. And after that, the project will pay itself. So that is the focus of this company. It's not a company that will be bidding against other companies for government projects. That's not it. But now coming back to your question of pending bills. Pending bills has been a challenge. And by the way, some of these pending bills date back to 2005. They are not pending bills of yesterday. And it is not something that you can fix in a day. So we have gone through the verification, and the committee has already compiled a report. And that report reduced the pending bills payable to about 200 and 235, 240 billion. I think finally the figure may be 250 because they are supposed to give me the final report by the end of this month when their term is finally coming to an end. Now, already we have paid close to more than 80 billion shillings because part of that pending bill was relating to the road sector, and we, through securitization, raised funds, which as we paid 80% of the bills so far, 40. Right now, I think this week or next week, they will clear the remaining 20%. So almost 100% of the pending bills under the road sector will have been cleared as at the time, I think December 2024, right? So going backwards. Now, the other bills, we are working on a cabinet memo to present to the cabinet on how then we deal with about 155 billion shillings of pending bills relating to other sectors of the economy. And this will help us move the economy forward. But you can see this, the effect and the signs of reducing pending bills by the government, all right? Especially in the road sector. If you read this paper that I have here, there's a Business Daily. It's telling you the report of November is clearly indicating that the non-performing loans have drastically dropped from the month of August, September, October, November now. The non-performing loans means the loans that were not being serviced in the bank. What does that tell you? It tells you that there's some liquidity that has come into the market, that the contractors and the suppliers who have not been paid over the years are now getting paid. And so they are reducing their debt liability with the banks. You can see the bank rates have fallen drastically. You have seen even the uptake in this report of November, the highest increase in credit to private sector has been recorded in 19 months, which is today 6.3. Remember, early this year, there was a contraction. There was a decline in credit to the private sector. It was growing at negative 2.9. But today, it is growing. The month of November, credit to private sector grew to 6.3%, which is a very high percentage. And that tells you clearly that the economy is picking up. You know, you will hear people talking a lot about other things. We are not feeling money in our pockets. It's all well. You will hear the opposition speaking negatively about the government, that nothing is happening. But what is the reality? The reality is that the bank rates have fallen, right? In 1 year ago, the average bank lending rate was 17.2. Today it has fallen below 15%, it's 14.9, and it is continuing to come down. That is how to improve the economy. That is how to get money into people's pockets. Because if you can go to the bank and borrow cheaply, that is what you want. And that is money that will go to the private sector and expand businesses, expand companies, and they will offer employment to our people.
Because we do know that one of the sure ways of making sure that an economy grows is by putting support behind the private sector.
Exactly.
Like you so well said, government is not in the business of doing business.
Correct.
Interesting that you should say so, because we still do know that one of the greatest impediments towards these processes being seen and actually being felt is corruption. And that we often make connections between countries who've developed, but one of the things that they did do was reduce on corruption. This 244 billion shillings that would be gotten from the divestiture of these Safaricom shares of government ownership actually equates to the amount of money that in a year would be recovered from acts of corruption. That's equal to the amount of money. In fact, the corruption money that is gotten, according to reports, is more than this money that would be made from the sale of these shares by government. So it seems to me that perhaps the focus really needs to lean heavily on ridding the corruption holes in the country.
That's
Why
correct.
is the attention not being put there as much as we should?
That's correct, no, but we are doing both. You know, let me tell you, how do you fight corruption? By making it difficult. Because first, I am cabinet secretary in charge of National Treasury. I'm not a police officer. So what would I be doing? I would put up systems that would make corruption difficult. We have identified sources of corruption in this country, and one of them, and the leading which is contributing, according to assessment, almost 70%. 70% of corruption activities in the country is procurement. And that is why we are insisting in implementing a more transparent system that is e-procurement. You can see the pushback. You can see the fights. In fact, some are very brazen, and they will tell you that you are closing all the taps for us. I have shared with many leaders, you can't believe, in fact, how Kenyans can be interesting in the way they even communicate about corruption. It doesn't bother them. They will tell you, what is this you are doing to us? You are just closing the taps for us. I said, exactly, that is what I'm doing. So e-procurement is going to help us reduce the level of corruption significantly. Another reform that we have just implemented this year, and in fact, the year 2025 has been the year of reforms. The other one is on Treasury single account. I will tell you, you can't believe, Dennis, what I see. A lot of, by twinning the invoices, I don't know whether you understand that, I would repeat, a lot of requests for payment coming to us are invoices that are supposed to be paid a second time, even a third time. So we have been having cases where we pay invoices multiple times. That is the country we live in. And so that is something that Treasury single account is sorting out now. And there are so many institutions fighting back that because they have been used to getting corruptly public funds, and they take it like it's a right now. So with the implementation of e-procurement, which I think in the next financial year will be 100%. This year it had challenges, but I'm happy that it is picking up. Many procuring entities have embraced this, including some counties, including even far-flung universities like Garissa University, embracing e-procurement. If we completely embrace e-procurement in government, we comply with that one, we must. The Treasury single account, no option. Actually, I have already implemented that together with my team at the National Treasury. There is also the integration of the payroll, the human resource management system is also weeding out the ghost workers and any double or multiple pays, and also making sure that there is discipline in the management of cash, where if money has been requested, if for example, on the issue of the human resource, once you have requested money to pay NSSF, NHI, and other deductions, they go direct to those SHA, NSSF, pay as you are to a KRA. All this money will automatically be transmitted to this institution, so that we'll not have a case where you retain people's salary and misuse it or apply it elsewhere. On the Treasury single account, if you now requisition money to pay supplier X, you cannot use that money again to pay Y. We have been having cases of voiding those transactions. Once the request is made, the controller of budget has already approved, the money hits the account and is diverted and paid to someone else by voiding the one who was supposed to receive the money. And then you can get invoices paid even 3 times. So those are some of the measures and the reforms that we have brought to deal with corruption. So it cannot be said that we are doing nothing about corruption.
Waziri, you see, when you talk about the economy doing well, which rightfully so falls in your purview, right? Yours is to ensure that we are thriving as a country. Yes. And with that, then one would go forward and ask the question, when it comes to matters to do with the manufacturing, how are we looking at that? When you look at the products that we do provide in terms of value addition, how are we approaching that? Because at the end of the day, any nation that has developed to get to that state of a developed nation, manufacturing and value addition to their products become center and conversations that are held on a daily basis. We have our coffee, we have our tea, we are doing exploration on our oil, fuel and all that. What are we doing? What are some of the policies that you are pushing to ensure that that which Kenya must produce for us to export and not import back is done? What conversations are we having towards that?
That's correct. In fact, there's no economy which can grow and attain a first world status without attending to its manufacturing sector, because no economy can grow on the primary raw materials exportation and all that. So Kenya is not an exception, and therefore I would agree with you that our manufacturing sector has been sluggish. In fact, late last year, our manufacturing sector was growing at a negative, but it has picked up, though at a slower pace than what we want. It's now growing at about 2%, and we want manufacturing sector to grow at least 7.6%. Then that would create more job opportunities. So we are laying the foundation for value addition. I know we have revived, or rather improved, the tea sector. The coffee sector has been revived. The pyrethrum sector is being revived. But we are now working on the value addition, or the value add. And that is why you can see a commitment on the county integrated industrial parks, aggregated industrial parks, the KIPES. We want to go to the local economy, because if you want to really add value, you have to do it at the grassroots. And almost all counties, a lot of them, the parks are at very advanced stages. We are trying to blend their money. We are matching the county's resources with the national government resources to complete these projects. And some of them are going to be completed this financial year. Some will come the following financial year. So that is value addition at that level. We are also attracting investment by improving the environment. And a lot of the legal framework, the finance bill, touched on a number of taxes to allow or to attract foreign investment into our space. And you can see Kenya has been now rated as as the best investment decision in Africa because of the decisions that we are taking, one of which is economic performance. So gradually we are moving to that, to enhanced manufacturing sector participation in our economy. But we are also not leaving behind other sectors like mining and quarrying and minerals, which was doing very poorly by the end of last year again, but it has picked up. It was growing again at a negative of 2.9%, I think. Now, in the first quarter of this year, it grew at over 5%, and then the second quarter it grew at 10.1%. That was because we injected some support to the mining industry of about 2.6 billion. So with that investment, you can see the results, and even the construction sector also has picked up very well. So we are working on all the sectors of economy with more focus and attention on the manufacturing sector. Yeah.
So of those two things that are very clear that need to happen for an economy to grow is the number one, which we've looked at, I mean, very lightly at the top, which is corruption. We make the parallels, and in this place I'll call you CPA, we make the parallels between countries that have moved to developed from developing. And one of the first things is that they have really tightened the screws on corruption, and then they've made sure that they're selling for profit. Just like you said in the manufacturing, they make and sell for profit to the outside world. One of the things that will also continue to stifle Kenya is its debt. The amount of money, because you oversee these payments every day, possibly, that any money that hits the consolidated account, first of all, goes towards paying debt to the tune of almost 70% of income. How then will we see that this money that you're getting from now shares of companies will not also go towards paying debt first? How will you operate a purely independent company without looking at the stifling debt that Kenya is struggling under, which we know Kenya can only take a loan for development, but we have not seen development commensurate to the debt that Kenya owes, almost 12 trillion shillings at the moment. And we are hard-pressed to see what development projects, because we know that legally Kenya can only take this money for development. We are hard-pressed to find projects commensurate to 12 trillion shillings in Kenya in the last 20 years. How do we explain that? And how can you assure Kenyans? Because I think to an extent, Waziri, you need to do that. How do you assure Kenyans that this money is 240 billion from Safaricom, KPC, however much that might be, other companies then that are earmarked for this thing to go to this fund will go towards the development that you speak about, and that we can see it?
First of all, I want Kenyans to have confidence, because the way we are structuring this fund it is not going to be spent on anything else apart from infrastructure development, and not just infrastructure, commercially viable public infrastructure projects. That is the bottom line. We will not even take it to do a road in Soba, which is not commercially viable, that cannot pay itself back. We are going to spend it on projects which can be commercialized, projects where we can get revenue to pay back to this fund again, because this fund must be a revolving fund with the resources that are not drying up. So that is, in fact, at 8, do you remember we were supposed to have this engagement from 7 to 8?
Yeah.
At 8, I have a meeting, very important. We have a very important meeting, and we are meeting the head of state just to discuss the progress we are making in terms of forming this company and in terms of progressing this National Infrastructure Fund forward. It will not be used for anything else apart from developing infrastructure. The only portion that may be taken or hived off this fund will go to Sovereign Wealth Fund. So we are thinking of a small percentage going to Sovereign Wealth Fund. And why? Because when we offload shares in our public assets, we need to preserve and release a portion of it to the future generation. So that is the only thing we are going to entertain here. This money will and cannot be used for debt repayment. Debt is consuming about 50% of our ordinary revenue as a percentage, and it is already choking, I would say, and it's accepted. But we will still continue to pay debt from our revenue collections. The only thing that maybe in future will help us from this fund to pay debts is if it spurs economic growth, and so that we collect more taxes. By doing these roads, by doing these dams, by doing airport and all this, there will be economic re-engineering of our economy. And that will mean that we will now be collecting more taxes, and they will be collecting more taxes and paying now the debts easily, or even now at a lower percentage, because there will be a bigger pie. There will be more revenue coming into a revenue stream. But we will not directly use the proceeds of privatization or divestiture of government to pay loans or even to pay other recurrent expenses.
Waziri, the debt that you say is choking Kenyans today, many say it is choking Kenyans because the money has been stolen. And one of the ways that you as Waziri, who is in charge of overseeing the debt repayment of these, one would ask the question, if these monies were stolen, why isn't Treasury, the government of Kenya, pushing to ensure that those who stole the monies are brought to book, they pay this money so that Kenyans are not choked in paying this debt? Are we looking at heads rolling for those who've stolen this money to end up in jail?
You know, there could be a number of reasons why the debt that we have we are finding it difficult to pay. One is could be there was corruption in the implementation of some of these projects.
Budgeted.
And, yes.
Yeah.
Which, again, we have institutions which have the mandate to follow through. And A, we have the Auditor General to come up with a report. B, we have the National Assembly and the Senate to oversight and make recommendations. We have ESCC, we have DCI. And so the role of National Treasury is to put in place systems that would deter. It is not really the work of CS National Treasury to go after people who have stolen money. Now, second, there could also be a reason why, and I will explain to you another reason why we could be finding it hard to pay our debts, is because we invested these debts, or the money that we collected, the proceeds, into long-term infrastructure projects, some of which are taking too long, would take too long, and that is the practice, to pay back or have serious economic impact on the economy. And so that one is why we are now taking off some of these projects out of the budget, normal budgetary process, because the loans that we take, some of them are short-term. Even the bilateral loans that we took, some of them are 7-year loans, and you are investing in a project that would take 30 years to pay back to the economy. It's not prudent to support or finance such projects using loan money. You now need to go to another model, and that's why we are going to this model where an investor will come in, and these are institutional investors which need constant stream of money even for 50 years, because they will be paying their pensioners, they will be paying insurance claims and all that. So they can put money in, which would take 30 years to recover in a staggered, more systematic way. So the mistake that I think we made as a country around 2013, 2014 coming up was that we decided to do so many infrastructure projects with loan and long-term infrastructure projects, which take long for them to have clear impact on the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you say there's budgeted corruption, which we know that there is already, we know there's budgeted corruption. That has been the practice. It's difficult for Kenya to pay its loans. Long-term infrastructure projects for which money has been provided has not been completed. We're talking about 10, 15 years. Money has been provided in terms of borrowing of these loans for these projects to start, to progress, and to be completed. This has not happened. The mystery around all of this, and we're going to go back to where we started from, is that if we're looking at a company which is going to be commercially viable, the mystery here, Waziri, is who is this person? Who are these people? Because unless they come from outside Kenya, who are these people who are going to run, manage, and control this fund, which, according to what you're saying, at some point may get into the trillions of shillings? Who will run it in a manner in which it will be watertight and above board, that will not go back in the direction of this budgeted corruption? Money has been taken, projects unfinished, and due diligence unable to be followed. Who is this person? Who is this entity that's going to do this, that government trusts enough to do a thing that itself has been unable to do? You can imagine where the jitters are coming from.
Yeah, so it is true that there have been some budgeted corruption. That's why we are changing our model of budgeting into zero-based budgeting. We are now insisting, and the budget that we are working on today has been based on zero-based budget. We had sector engagement in Mombasa. Each State Department must justify every shilling that they are requesting from the National Treasury, as opposed to previously when we were doing incremental budgeting. Also, the issue that you have raised regarding some of the commitments that we make with our development partners, the money we start paying and the project has not even kicked off. We are again dealing with that because we are addressing the question of the all donor-funded projects. There are a number of reasons. I don't want to go into the details why we have been having challenges, yet we start paying commitment fees on projects that have not even kicked off. So we are working on that. The Office of the Deputy President is coordinating that engagement with the development partners. My office is also coordinating the technical aspects. And we have had 3 meetings with development partners to just thrash out and deal with these challenges of implementation of donor-funded projects. Now, to come back to your question of who is this person. Now, let me put it this way. We want this company to be professionally run. And therefore, the people who are going to be put in this company must be people of integrity, must be people who are competent enough to run this entity. And where I don't want to agree with you is that where you are saying unless we bring people who are not Kenyans. By the way, there are Kenyans who do fantastic job.
Absolutely.
Like,
and that's the hope, Waziri, that there will be people who've not been connected to these projects in the past.
Yes.
And that there will be people who we know are above board with no connection to the processes that already exist. That's the fear.
That is where I am saying we must get the right people in this company, in this space. This fund must be run professionally. I was telling you about Kenyans. Look at the companies around this space. Many of them are making huge profits, doing very well. Safaricom is one of them, led by Kenyans, Safaricom PLC. We have KCB is doing very well, Coop Bank, all these banks, Equity Bank, these are all run. Look at how Equity has expanded, and it is run and managed by Kenyans. I mean, if you get the right people, the right Kenyans. In fact, Kenya as a country in Africa is leading in terms of human capital.
True.
You can probably just compare it with a few, like maybe Ghana. Kenya is fantastic in terms of our human resource capacity. And that is actually has been our strength. which is even attracting direct foreign investment. So we have the people. It's only that the identification of these people has been a challenge. Sometimes we use tribal lenses, sometimes we use vested interest. We need to allow the right Kenyans, regardless of where they're coming from, not to talk about other parameters like shareholding. Let us accept that we can bring in the right people. And so what we should be judged on is the process of constituting this company and bringing people onto it is where Kenyans now should subject us to scrutiny, to just say, oh, wait a minute, this guy doesn't have the background of running serious business. We have Kenyans who have run, and we can poach. We can even headhunt and get the right people into this company. By the way, there are so many Kenyans, some of them are very reputable, who have started expressing interest that they would want to do this. But we are going to have a system that is foolproof to get people on board.
Waziri, as we talk about this company that will be foolproof, that will run in the way Kenyans expect, one would equally say that we want as well the companies that the government has, these are the companies that are not run well, to be fixed. Because whether we like it or not, these companies as well will be here. And they must perform to the levels that we expect. So as we work on putting up this company that will be run professionally, perhaps we also look inwards and say, we are not leaving these ones behind, because they are part and parcel of the entire ecosystem that will spur the economic growth that we look forward as Kenya, perhaps.
Exactly, and that is what we are doing. Remember, we are doing so many things. Maybe we were just talking about Safaricom. There is a whole question of SOE reforms, the state-owned enterprise, something that has been pending for years. At least this government now is implementing it. First, remember, we just passed a government-owned enterprise bill, which is now Government-Owned Enterprise Act. We have taken off, or we are taking off, about 60 or so state-owned enterprises which are commercially viable. To taking their management, we are even removing them from line ministries and making them be more managed from the National Treasury, because National Treasury, the Cabinet Secretary, owns assets on behalf of Kenyans. So, but beyond that, we have even improved. The constitution of boards is not now in commercially viable state-owned enterprises. It's no longer going to be done the way it has been done, where a cabinet secretary just makes appointments. There is going to be a process of identifying, even doing the shortlisting, doing the interviews. This is going now to be done to get the board members, as opposed to what it is today, where people have been saying we are using them as political rewards. Well, there's nothing really wrong with politicians also holding position. I'm also have a background in politics, and I'm here, and I believe I can do something because I have gone to school, I have a professional experience and all that. But then, that shouldn't be the only guiding principle or judgment, that because you have been an MP here, whatever there, then that for you, we have to reward you by giving you appointment. So there is definitely a change in the governance structure of government-owned. We now call them government-owned enterprises. That is the commercially viable ones. Then the rest also, we are even merging. Remember, we used to have tourism promotion fund and tourism. We are merging those funds together, and many, many others. There are so many parastatals which are being collapsed now. Some we have already effected. Today, we only have one tourism fund. Nothing else from October, and many other parastatals which we have merged. Some we have even removed from being parastatals because there is no basis of them. So we are restructuring the state-owned enterprises, something that took several governments years and they never did, and we are now doing it and we are implementing it. Why are we doing that? To cut on cost and pressures on our exchequer, which some of them are ridiculous. You hear of some parastatals you have never heard of, and they are there consuming public resources. Some of them I had not had. It was the first time I was hearing about them. So we are doing a number of reforms in the state-owned enterprises.
Okay. When we look at unfinished projects, they are gobbling up quite a lot in terms of money that has gone in, but they can't come out. There are some counties that have unfinished projects in the hundreds.
Yeah.
And then we see many things happening at the same time, where counties also have accounts in the tens. But then what happens in terms of oversight to ensure this money that has gone into this project brings out a result? These are some of the things that we look at that affect the economy. And I know that you talked about the fact that people are crying because there's no money in their pockets. Waziri, that's the truth. The cost of living conversation is a conversation that, if not had by government in terms of how it's going to make life just a little bit better for Kenyans, then I think we are doing a huge injustice to Kenyans. That Kenyans have to worry about how they will treat their sick. Kenyans have to worry that, you may not know this, but their modus operandi is a meal a day, not 3. That children are worried about parents are worried about how they will send children to school. That we are doing harambes every minute for people who are unwell. So whereas we may crunch the numbers on the top from a financial point of view, the micro reality is that there are millions of Kenyans who are not able to see the projection or live that projection. So one would imagine that when you're crunching the numbers or pressing the formula, that the result is that Kenyans are doing a little bit better every day, but it seems to be going in the opposite direction. What is a simple answer that will realize more money in the pocket of Kenyans, more food on their table, or at least the ability to drive a process that then does these things? What's the simple answer to that?
So, to address your question around the projects that have stalled or not taking off, it is all about budgetary discipline. And this is at the national and at the county levels. Now, at the national government level, we are working on curing this first before it cascades to the counties, because you can't start with someone before you start with yourself. Now, at the national level, we are insisting now on zero-based budget, and we are also insisting on realistic budget revenue projections, because that is one reason why we have been accumulating or rather having stalled projects. And we are also insisting that before you propose new projects, you must have a strategy on how to complete the ongoing projects. So all that is being addressed at the national government level. That is the only way to deal with it. And then I hope this will cascade in counties. Counties have this tendency of projecting. They put expenditure first, then because they know this is the shareable revenue, the remaining deficit they lump onto own source revenue, which they know they will not even collect. And so they start implementing projects where they don't even have money in the first place. That is hence accumulation of pending bills, and also the problem that we have of incomplete projects or uncompleted projects. Now, to answer your question on the cost of living, how do we deal with the cost of living and having people having money in their pockets? It is a multi-pronged approach. One is, first, you must create employment to our people. Because the biggest challenge we have, and I'm sure you also face it, maybe because I know you are here, and my friend then is here. A few of us who are earning salary, so many people depend on us, because you have your brother, your sisters who has left school with the degrees, some 2, some 3, and they have nothing. And so you have to step in to assist them. I do step in to assist my siblings, my people who are close to me. And if each one of us was having something to do, we would reduce that pressure of black tax. That is one thing that is making us have less now to spend on ourselves. And then you feel the pressure and you say you have no money in your pocket. The other thing, so creating jobs is one way, and I've spoken to that. The other way to deal with it is also to enhance disposable income. I know that there has been a beating, or rather some heat on our disposable income, especially from 2023 and coming up. You remember we had some relief and reprieve during COVID, and many of us thought that would continue. Then that came down, and then there are some tax increases from 2023. And the tax increases was not out of nothing. Really, we had pressure with our debts repayment. Either we had the option of failing or defaulting in debt. If we did, we would not have economy even to complain about. We would have nothing. The Kenya would just have gone to the dogs. But then we have tried to manage a bit, to reduce that pressure. If you look at what we did with the Tax Laws Amendment Act of 2024, December, there was some reprieve that we gave. And even the last finance bill, especially for those of you working in the private sector, there are certain things that public sector was enjoying and you are not enjoying in terms of tax allowable benefits. Well, that we did. And the pension, something like pension, we have excluded from taxation, and even what do you call it, gratuity. So we are working. In fact, the thinking of the government based on the tax policy, the national tax policy, is that we reduce the tax rates, and including even corporation tax, or the corporate tax. So all this we are doing to make life better. But something last that I would say. To make life better for Kenyans, you need to reduce interest rates in the bank. Because that is how then the private sector would get money, expand employment, even increase people's salary. Because an employer who has squeezed resources would not give you even a salary increment. So we are, look, you can see, and the evidence is there that the bank interest rates are coming down. And then again, let me point out that people have been saying that things are just out of hand. It is not entirely correct, because I've told you about Purchasing Managers Index. That is what measures the people's purchasing power. Kenyans are purchasing more. That is the fact. From August, September, October, November. If we continue in that trajectory going forward, then we will have more liquidity in the market. Lastly, the government has been trying to make sure that the cost of living does not increase or rise exponentially to an untenable level. And that is why the cost of food, the government has invested in agriculture to make sure that we have food. We are also talking that and speaking to the fact that we cannot continue over-relying on rain-fed agriculture. Look at the way the weather projection is being made today. We are likely to have depressed rains. So we need to move to irrigated agriculture. Therefore, in which case, food will be cheap. And sugar has now been, the prices of sugar has been maintained because we have reduced the importation of sugar. And if we can continue that way, like now Bora scheme, about 50,000 acres is being put under sugarcane production. If we can be self-sufficient in sugar, self-sufficient in maize, rice, we are still importing about 700,000 bags of rice. If we can be self-sufficient in rice, self-sufficient in sugar, and edible oil, we improve on edible oil, we will reduce the food imports from 500 billion that we are spending per annum to even 100 billion, or even eliminate it completely, and even get to a net exporter of food, because we can.
So, I mean, lastly, Waziri, public participation for the Safaricom divestiture of government shares, where is that being held? How can people lend their voice to this, and how will that happen?
Yes, it is good you have asked that question. You know, sometimes I get really, is it interesting or baffled at the same time that Kenyans call for public participation when they should be doing public participation. Or sometimes they wait for public participation to end, then they ask you for public participation. Right now is the time for public participation. Parliament has already advertised. It was on the newspapers, I think on Monday. They asked for opinions, and there will be engagement. I think they gave even a itinerary of where the two committees of Parliament will be engaging with the public. It is an opportunity. They have about 30 days. It's an opportunity now for Kenyans. And you can even do a written memorandum and submit it to Parliament, in the National Assembly. But there was also public engagement, giving timetable on where the committees are supposed to engage with Kenyans. After that is when the National Assembly will now retreat and do their report, and they will invite me to appear before them to answer to the concerns of Kenya. So the time for public participation is now. Don't wait. Then after December, in January, Ukombele, around mid-January, then you start asking, why is it that we have not done public participation? This is the time for public participation. And part of public participation is what you are doing. You see, I'm here, seated here.
Yes.
I have answered so many questions. I am sure Kenyans are also sending you questions. That is what we call public participation. And they are listening to what I'm saying. Now they need to petition their legislators and tell them, from what we have heard from Mbadi, we support this, but these are our concerns. Why don't you raise it with them? And members of National Assembly, I hope and I believe, should be visiting their constituencies to listen to the people. And one of the things they should be asking their people when they visit, because I've been a member of parliament for 17 years, so I'm speaking about something that I know. Talk to your people, ask them. There is this question about Safaricom. What do you have to say about it?
Right.
At least hold one baraza. If you want to be a good people's representatives, hold one baraza with your constituents and ask them. It doesn't have to be everybody. The feeling and the thinking of people is usually uniform across. So just ask them about Safaricom. They will tell you their misgivings and their concern. Then you bring that concern to Parliament.
To Parliament and bring it to Parliament.
Yes.
The CS National Treasury is CPA John Mbadi, and he's been here with us this morning. We've overshot our time, but necessary for some of those things to come in.
I want you to improve it a bit and say FCPA.
FCPA.
Yes.
Well, we can do that.
Thank you.
It's the CS in the National Treasury. FCPA John Mbadi has been here with us this morning. Thank you for being here. We look forward to these conversations. You will still come under pressure, so I'm sure that you have a tough skin to then be able to answer the questions that Kenyans have.
That's why I took the job.
Above board. Kabisa. Asante sana. At 17 minutes past 7. Thank you for being here. We look forward to the next. Asante.
The only way to start your day.